Welcome to Inclusion Revolution here on Eastlink TV. I'm your host, Tova Sherman, and again we have Peg Britton with us, and we're discussing some of the challenges of being an effective self-advocate. And I'm very pleased that Peg has come to us and asked us for a little bit of information around it and allowed us to use this dialogue as an opportunity for you, the viewer, to share in some of these strategies. So Peg, just before we broke, I believe we were going to come back and I was going to give you my 2 cents worth on this story and perhaps share with you some of the strategies I believe that are highly successful and have been proven highly successful in my experiences. And of course I go back to the paper. And I believe that although you did some really clever work in reaching back and getting letters from doctors about your own strengths and competencies, it might be very helpful, especially for institutions, to receive something from someone within an institution who's recognized, who could talk about the fact that after amputation, one can still actively do things, and that person could certainly give examples, whether it's a medical expert or perhaps an athlete, and providing them that opportunity, again, not because of a lack of sensitivity, but show them the awareness from an environment that they understand and they can accept, because often institutions like to hear from institutions and so on. And that might have been my first move, but I would not just send the letter. I would clearly have a cover letter, and in that cover letter I would make it clear as to my concerns, as to the discussions that you've had with the experts. Please see enclosed letter, as an example of that. Again, to express your concern about the inclusion of persons with disabilities, if this is happening, in a sense of what else. So I think it's important to look at the broader issue as well, because really you're the kind of person I know who cares about the broader issue. What happens to the next young person that comes through? And I know that weighed on you because we were talking about that. And it's important when we advocate, we determine what we want out of it. For instance, if it's revenge, some people like revenge, your tact is going to be very different. My tact is based on wanting a conciliatory result that is a win-win for everyone, and perhaps even 3 wins, because that person coming the next time won't face some of the stigma that you experienced. So in addition to the letter, we have that cover letter where we're talking about timelines. And what I mean by timelines is we should always request a time by which we are responded to. I feel that's very important. Otherwise, we've given them the wide end. Get back to me in 120 days. Which, of course, in my world would be forever, especially on an issue that matters so much. So it's important to give a reasonable timeline as to when you'd like to be responded to request responses always in writing, because oftentimes calls get very heated, and then nobody quite remembers exactly how it happened, and you get an awful lot of stories. So I think it's extremely important that you do your self-advocacy work in writing.
Absolutely.
Anything from that point that, at this stage that doesn't make sense, or you want to ask more? I know I'm doing all the advising here, but then again, you asked for it. So
well, no, and I thank you for that. I wish I had that knowledge when I was 16, or at least a little bit more to go on. As for more questions, I know I have plenty for you. Mostly, especially if you're a young person, 16, 17, in high school, and you've accepted you're not buying what they're selling. What's your next step aside from writing? So say that organization or the school board or whoever doesn't get back to you, what do you do then?
Right. Well, wherever we're advocating for, and under any circumstance, if we give a date and they haven't responded, we then have the right to certainly write a second letter saying that date has passed. We may want to look at who that person's supervisor is, assuming there is. And it's very important you determine who to write the letter to. Because if you're going to write it, for instance, to a rugby coach, then you're going to need to send it also to some of the people in the higher ups. If it's something to do with a medical record, again, you may want to write the doctor about the release of your medical records if you're having challenges, and it's one of those advocacy pieces I've experienced a lot. But at the same time, you might want to also write the physicians. School of Physicians. But again, it's about what do I want. If I want to play rugby, then the most important thing is to educate in a way that doesn't alienate the people you're talking to. So the anger has to go to the back burner if effectiveness is more important than revenge.
Right.
And that's one of the most important things that are really the biggest challenge to self-advocacy, is managing your own frustration and anger so that you are being productive rather than biting off your own nose or something like that just because you're so frustrated, and justifiably perhaps. So again, I keep going back to that control and understanding of your own emotions. understanding what your purpose is in doing this. And if your purpose is to open doors and educate, then you might want to talk about the availability of disability awareness training. If they were interested, that you've spoken to an agency and they've said that they'd be willing to come in and talk to you. Like, think about what you want and then how you can get it.